In this episode of ICS Connects, I'm talking to Martin Enault, and we talk about mental health in a professional environment, especially in a crisis like now. Some helpful tips and methods and examples of how to deal with it. So listen in and let's explore the future of exchange. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I'm here with Martin Enault today. He's an entrepreneur and a mental health ambassador. And we're going to talk a little bit about the important topic of mental health in leadership and mental health in general. Welcome to ICS Connects, Martin. Thank you for being available.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure being here.
Maybe start us off. What are some of your personal experiences with mental health in relation to your job, and especially for people that are in leadership positions? What can you share in that sense?
I've been involved in the world of mental health as chairman of an organization in Canada called Revivre, which means relief in French, in which we help people suffering from anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. And I'm afflicted by all three of those disorders. So my entire life, I've been struggling with panic attacks, bouts of anxiety and depression, and was recently, in the last few months, diagnosed with the bipolar disorder type 2. So mental health struggles has been part of my life since my teenage years, but it took me a while before I understood what it was, what it meant, and how it would transform me as a person as well. Because often we see mental health struggles as only negative. I can say from my own experience in leadership position that being able to connect with people differently because you understand what they're going through, because everyone goes through some tougher times at some point, can be more positive than negative. And in my own self, I've managed to find strength and resilience that I never knew was there just by learning and understanding who I was better. So as I've started opening more about what I've been going through on a mental health perspective and what it means to have a panic attack when you're opening at large events and you have hundreds of thousands of people in front of you and you're there frozen with a panic attack, what does it mean and what it does to you and such, I've quickly realized that there's so many more people than I thought that are afflicted with this, yet barely anyone speaks up about it. So I figured that I had a place to play in representing what it means to be afflicted by mental health issues, but at the same time finding strength and positivity in it, and how you can actually build better, more successful businesses when you understand a bit more about your own mental health and the mental health of the people around you.
I know you, and most people probably listening to you know you from actually being out there in a position, not just a leadership position internally, but you were kind of like the face of your project in your company, and you were out there promoting openly. You were on stages, you were kind of like part of panel discussions, like struggling with the mental health kind of like issues that you described, from bipolar disorder and so on. How was that for you? How did you manage to kind of like still kind of like have the position you have while you are kind of like, and you said it had some of the strength, but I'm sure there was moments when you kind of, when it was really inhibiting you, and how did you overcome that in that moment?
I've worked between the event industry and technology my entire life. And I started my career in technology as an entrepreneur and quickly discovered the world of events, which was exciting and different and such. And I've kind of become addicted to it. And I quickly realized that adrenaline was an addiction for me. And I think it's the case for a lot of people working in the event industry, that the rush that you have from running events gives you a kick that you keep wanting more and more and more and more of it. And I honestly, it became a drug for me as much as alcohol or actual substance abuse can be for other people, was events and what it meant. I was part of, I was general manager of a company called Ticket Pro for Canada company was operating in Europe, which was ticketing company. And then I was part of companies organizing large exhibitions and events and festivals and such. And I founded Intellytics, which was one of the first company in the world using RFID technology for access control and cashless payment and social media activations, and worked on Coachella, Bonnaroo, Lollapalooza, Tomorrowland, and many other large festivals in those years. And then in 2012, decided that the life of working on festivals and being an entrepreneur as co-founder of the company was becoming too much of a toll on me, because working constantly, traveling constantly, working on larger and larger events constantly meant that I actually put myself second, and to a point that I barely could recognize myself. And that's when I decided to take a step back and end up in the position I was when a lot of people listening probably know me from, with C2, as a COO of C2 for a number of years, and executive producer of C2 Montreal, and unfortunately I was going to be CEO of C2 in Asia Pacific and running C2 Melbourne. But as many people know, that was not an easy decision, but the company decided to pull the plug on that event. And at the same time, I decided it was time for me to move on in their position. So for sure, through all of those moments in time, opening up Coachella with a small team in one of the largest festivals in the world, where people's life depend on you, because if you mess up access control in a festival that large, people can trip up on each other, and you can lose control of the entire site. And having hundreds of thousands of people rushing from LA to enter the festival is just not a good idea. To running C2 and the level of clients that we had at C2, to failing so many people in the industry and in all industry by not being able to launch C2 Melbourne, and especially the team of people that was working so hard around it. My mental health was part of that entire journey, for good and bad reasons. I mean, first of all, when you're dealing with panic attacks, it means that there's times when, which I do control 99% of the time nowadays, because I found ways and developed skill set enabling me to manage them. But panic attack is not something you just feel mentally. It's something that you feel full on physically. In my case, I could lose eyesight. I had massive palpitations. I fainted. I barely had control over my left arm. I was completely in shock. And I've had many panic attacks in position where I had large events to operate, and I didn't want people around me to even know that was going on. So I was finding ways to kind of shield myself. And that was the wrong way of doing it back then. Quite frankly, when I look back now, I realize that I would have gotten so much more support and been able to do so much more if I had been more open about what I was going through. And what that's meant for me as a leader over the last few years is that when you start adding the cost of mental health in all industries, in the event industry, I think it's catastrophic, of burnouts and people missing work and people not being 100% and having to replace people constantly. That has a huge cost burden on most businesses. It also has a human burdens on how motivated people are around the business. And when you're able to actually understand and calculate that both as a human KPI and as a cost KPI, and how you can actually all make it better, you become a better person, the company is more healthy, and you're able to do so much more with your company than you would by pretending that it doesn't exist.
I love the point that you make, and I think the important, like one of the important things that you just mentioned is kind of like this pretending that you're fine, and people actually feeling some sort of shame or weakness if they would admit that they have certain kind of like whatever you call it, like mental health issues, kind of like burnout syndromes, whatever people are struggling with. Why do you think there's such a taboo in leadership in general? Why do you think it's so rare to actually have an open conversation about that? What do we have to actually break through to actually get to a different point on that?
First of all, I think the strength of the taboo is different from place to place and around the planet. Yeah. I mean, if you're in Singapore right now, I'm in Montreal. mental health definitely is seen differently in Singapore than it is in Montreal. And the same thing can be said for different places in Canada, different places in the US, and Europe, and Asia. Like it changes. Uh, Unfortunately, we've built kind of the premise that a leader, an entrepreneur, or anyone in a leadership position should pretend to be a superman or superwoman that never fails, that always has energy, that doesn't need to sleep, eat, and that should actually be proud of not eating and sleeping and not seeing their family and not seeing their friends. And that success is based on how little time you have to do anything else than work. It's a concept that's come out of, honestly, a couple hundred years of the Industrial Revolution, in which we've tried to transform as many people as possible into machines that didn't have emotions, that were just as productive as they could for their job, and that would just work a certain amount of hour and then enjoy their life outside of work, but not too much, so they had more focus for work. And now we're switching into a world where people want to have free time and time to enjoy life and jobs that they enjoy, and continuously learn throughout their entire life, and not just when they're at school, and have the ability, if they want to go back to school at 60, to do so, if they want to adopt a kid at any age, that they can do so, if they like it. We're in a world more and more that people are free to do what they want to do, but for some reason the concept of a leader being this superman or superwoman that doesn't fail has stuck around, and the startup world has adopted it as the mantra for that startups should be following.
Yeah.
And the event world has adopted it even more so. Like even when I was at C2, when we were building a site, I would make a point of being the first one on site, the last one out, even though I knew it was negative for me, because I wanted to inspire people. But what I realized more and more is, by doing things like that, you incite people to sleep less and to be less productive, because when you feel you have to work 20 hours a day or 18 hours a day, you're just less productive regardless of how you look at it. And when the leadership pushes you that way, everyone kind of follows suit, and then that's when you get into a model of not being able to deliver events successfully. That said, I mean, the event industry needs to do last minute builds and all that, which is normal, but I think there's a balance that can be found.
And I think as a leader, we very often fall into that trap of always being the last one, and always being the one that showcases, hey, I'm here still, I'm working hard with you. And if you run several events, it's something I caught myself in. You run several events, and there's different project teams working on those events. You want to prove the same to every project team, which means you never get a break. Those project teams might already be on break because their project's over, the next one's already there, and you trying to portray the same leadership skill to the next project team. And that's a big issue. But I also find, and I don't know how you agree, I feel the higher you're up in a leadership position, the empathy gets less for you, because it's you are the boss, so you're seen as this superman, as you mentioned, and you enjoy much less empathy for your own struggles. Don't you think that's very often the case?
Of course, people see you as their leader, so they're going to expect you to lead them forward. And we do have a tendency, as much as I hate to say it, we've been a society following strong white men forward for a long time. It's wrong. I keep talking about the fact that white men have to step up and talk about racism and sexism and all the stupid things white men traditionally have been guilty of. But doesn't mean that those BS that we have are broken, and we still have that tendency of looking up, especially to men, as saying like you can fail. And fortunately, women have it harder in many ways. I mean, harder because of the sexism happening in all industries, but also because they always have to prove themselves more. Women expect other women to prove themselves more. Men expect women to prove themselves more. So they are in their own trap. But I feel that both men and women, by talking openly about these things, can find common grounds to move forward versus being stuck in this kind of spiral that never stops. I always tell people, what's the best thing you can do for your employees is, as a leader, take vacation, because you're going to be rested and they're going to see it's okay to take vacation, and you're going to have a staff that is more motivated and rested. If as a leader you keep sending your staff on vacation but you never take any, they all feel guilty when they go on vacation, so they don't come back as rested, and they feel guilty the entire time reading their emails. If they see that the boss as well takes vacation, then that's fine. If the boss doesn't always respond to emails on weekends, then they feel less guilty not always answering emails on weekends. I mean, there's a balance to find that if there's an event coming up, of course, people have to answer the email on the weekend if there's an event in 2 weeks. But if there's no events in the next 6 months, or right now during COVID time, then why would people need to be connected 24/7?
I think it's so important that we understand that everybody deals with different biases, right? So, which might push them into a direction that's very unhealthy. But we all have those biases in us, and then being more empathetic towards people around us is going to be an important point. And you're absolutely right. As a white male, I think we have to learn empathy quite a bit and be. And I think people that have a heightened empathy very often are also falling into a trap of mental health, probably. But as you said in your beginning, it can be a positive too to have this empathy for other people. So I feel like it's an interesting cycle that we're in. You want people that have empathy; they're more likely to actually be good to their employees and people around them, but they're also more likely to have mental health issues themselves.
The trap of trying to find a miracle solution. Like I often hear about people telling me yoga or mindfulness or whatever is the solution for me. It may be true, but it's not the solution for everyone. And you should find whatever is the right solution for you to be healthy and happy, and not enforce that solution on all your employees. If you feel yoga is the right thing for you, it doesn't mean that one of your event coordinator will feel the same way. It doesn't mean that your CFO will feel the same way. It doesn't mean like everyone is different. It's about having an open, vulnerable relationship with your employees that doesn't go on, because it's dangerous when you start opening up about mental health and your own issues with staff, that workplaces become a therapy, that everyone becomes a psychologist and a specialist in everyone's mental health. That's dangerous and that's unhealthy. The workplace should stay professional, but having an environment where if an employee says in the morning to their boss, I'm just not able to work today, I'm sorry, that the boss understands that, hey, this employee needs time. And if they need to talk, they know they can talk to me. Otherwise, I'll give them their space. And the employee knows that when they want to talk about it, their boss is open to it, but doesn't expect it. And if they do, it's because they want to find a workplace arrangement, not a solution to a personal crisis. Mm-hmm. But also, as boss, that if someone loses, like someone dies around them, family member, friends, or whatever, it is a highly traumatic moment. If you expect by giving them an afternoon off that they're going to be over that, it's stupid. If someone has a sick kid at home and you expect them to be at the office 40 hours that week anyways, and they have to constantly go back and forth from home in the workplace, it's stupid. Like it's better finding an environment where employees, when they abuse, you talk openly to them about how you feel that they're abusing the system. Otherwise, then you have your trust relationship that is built, and that everyone knows that they have each other's back without becoming each other's therapists.
I think something really to remind ourselves, because there's a bit of with many leaders, if you're highly empathetic, you also have a bit of this savior complex and trying to take care of everybody's problems. And I think it's important to remind ourselves we can create environments where people feel comfortable talking, feel comfortable kind of like taking their time, feel comfortable looking after themselves, but we don't need to help everyone getting through their struggles, because we're not the professionals that are actually trained in that. And very often what we do, I think, as leaders is take on the emotional stress on ourselves, which then of course is bad for our own mental health. I don't know how much you've seen that, but I can see that as a problem that I've been facing myself as well, I guess.
and all the tips I'm giving you now also are based on my own mistakes and on the fact that I did not do those things properly, or found myself in position that I'm not proud of, and having done or said things I'm not proud of. I mean, I'm definitely not a perfect leader that's always done things right. I can definitely say I've done so many mistakes, and even in the case of C2, I definitely take the blame for a lot of the things that went wrong there. I still think about it daily, and how I wish some of the decisions I made would have been different. The reality is, in the case of C2, it was an almost impossible challenge we gave ourselves, but by constantly pushing myself and pushing others around me to try to deliver it, I became convinced myself that the impossible was possible. And the line is really, really fine when you're doing events between doing the impossible that we often do when we do an event and doing what is truly impossible. And we end up, because we keep delivering the impossible and delivering the impossible, think that, you know what, hey, we can still deliver even more, which is stupid and shouldn't be pushed to that level. But we keep telling ourselves that. And I've done that mistakes over and over in my life as well. And even what we're going right now with COVID, I mean, you can put your company, and some people see events as recession proof because there's always a need to group people, but no one thought about how to make events pandemic proof. And now we're in a world where worldwide the event industry was made illegal overnight, and without any warning, without anyone seeing it coming. And we're all in a position of being like, oh my God, what's going to happen now? And it's truly frightening, and I'm not going to lie about it, that we don't know what's going to come up. Like Melbourne just went back into lockdown today or yesterday in your time zone, and there is in Montreal was one of the biggest hubs for COVID in Canada. We've gone back control of it, but there keeps having bubbles bursting everywhere, and everyone's wondering, okay, when are we going to go back to normal, and when are we going to be able to find that sense of normalcy again? And I think it's a good time to take a pause, because we're forced to rethink about everything we've been doing, both from a mental health perspective, but also just as the industry itself and its practice and the way it's run and the way we treat our people and the way of the type of events we do. And we're all guilty of agreeing with clients of doing stupid events because the client's asking for it. What if we built education tools for those clients to learn to do better events after? I've been saying for years, and even though I'm not at C2 anymore, I still say it. Who enjoys being on a trade floor? I have yet to find a trade floor that I'm truly amazed by and saying, oh my God, this is really cool. Why don't we take this time to reinvent it? And this reinvention can be positive on a mental health perspective, but also be smart business when the industry is back on its feet. Because one thing that's not going to change, humans are social animals, and humans want to group up. So maybe it's in a year, maybe it's in 6 months, maybe it's in 3 months, but it will happen. And when it happens, let's not go back to our old ways of treating people, of running events and organizing everything.
A fantastic message, actually, something to take out of the current situation. There is a lot of anxiety right now building up within companies, like leaders, employees, anybody actually. How do you are there any tips you can give that you say that that's something like, because this is not necessarily an ongoing mental health issue, it's a current crisis that's coming, like there's a pandemic, people are fearing for their job, their health, there's a lot of different emotions coming together, and it's hitting us all very hard. Like, what do you think a company can do best to make sure kind of like it's been something they look after for themselves, for the leaders themselves and the employees in this environment of anxiety?
Being transparent and honest is the first thing. Anyone who pretends to their staff or their suppliers that things will be back to normal anytime soon, to just wait, is fooling themselves. Even if we do go back to normal, the normal is going to be different. People are not going to be as close to each other. People are not going to want to be squeezed on chair next to each other in a gala dinner and such. People will develop reflexes of social distancing. It means that there will be a different normal, and no one has the answer of what that new normal is. So as leaders, if you are open with your staff about your own fears, your own uncertainty, and you use them in the best way possible to find solutions, Cirque Éloise, one of the cirque company in Montreal, actually, I was talking with their general manager a few weeks ago, and it was telling me that they've given a task to every single employee, from the receptionist to the show creators, to the performers, of being on one or two committee reinventing the future of their business. And they're engaging every single employee on finding new ideas and new ways, and they've been open and transparent about what they can do, what they can't, what the government subsidies allows them to do, and all that, with the employees not keeping anything hidden from them, which I find is remarkable, because it's not the right time right now to pretend that business is going well or so badly. I mean, people will understand if you have to cut jobs, if you're transparent with them as to why you're doing so and what it means for the future and all that. They're not going to be happy about it, but at least they're going to feel respected in the whole process. By pretending that everything's fine until the last moment where you have to fire a ton of people that they don't see coming is wrong in this current pandemic. But I think it's hard to find opportunity right now, but I think it's still important to find ideas that can define the future of the industry. And if your plan is to bring back the normal, then you're obviously doing something wrong, and that's not going to help inspire your people in wanting to do more. And I often see a link between people being creative and inspired and happy, and their mental health, because it means that if you're happy and inspired, you're usually in a better spot when you're talking about anxiety and depression.
Great. I feel it's a great final message. Martin, I could have gone on with this. It's very interesting, and thanks so much for sharing openly. I just have one last thing. If anybody listens to this and says, like, a lot of these things are actually really applying to me, I'm feeling anxiety, I feel there's no out, I feel different issues. What should they first do? Who do they go to? Like, what's something that you recommend? Somebody listens and says, like, I need to take action. Where can they turn?
The answer can be very different. That said, there are incredible resources in Canada, in the US, in Australia, and in many places in Europe, and more in Asia, part of the healthcare system. But the one thing you should do is try to properly educate yourself with good resource, and go see your doctor and talk about how you feel. Doctors don't always have the right answers, or will push you in the right direction, but at least they help you build a plan as to where you want to go. There's an organization like Revivre.org that I can write the URL for that, that is in French and English, that has amazing resources and online tools. And I'm happy to put together a list of the various tools around the world that exist that can help you. But the most important thing is to talk to the people around you about how you feel, and explain to them why you feel that way, and not keep it to yourself and close up on it. And if you're feeling suicidal thoughts, I felt those thoughts my entire life up and down, and I see them now as a warning light, and I talk openly about them when I do have them, because it's a symptom of depression. It's a symptom of not feeling great. It means that you need to talk to people around you. It doesn't mean that you need to be rushed to the hospital right away. It means that you need to engage in discussion, and if you do feel desperate, then do go to the hospital. But in any case, the most important thing is start opening up to the people around you. And if the people around you are not willing to open up, find other people in your communities that are willing to. And I'm always available if anyone wants to connect with me.
Thank you so much, Martin. And anything that you share, I will share in the link and in the description of this video. Thanks so much for your time, Martin. I think this was extremely important conversation, and I learned a lot, and I hope lots of people did.
Maybe one last bit of advice. We often find peace in alcohol and drugs. I mean, I'm not drugs myself, but I'm just saying that those two elements can be seen as peace, and junk food as well. Those are your worst elements when it comes to mental health. Eat well, exercise, move around, avoid sugars and alcohol, and your mental health will be better.
Especially in our industry, I've seen a lot of alcohol and abuse like that. So that's great. Yeah. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Martin.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.